In today's video, we're taking a look at the latest trade talk around the league. Is there trouble in Vancouver? Do they need a locker room shakeup? We're going to discuss a defenseman from Pittsburgh who's available and may be interesting to some of the Canadian teams, including Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, and possibly Vancouver as well. And the Columbus Blue Jackets are another team to watch after a slow start. We also have news on the NHL waiver wire, big news in Calgary and a potential new arena development, and big news from the NHL that the salary cap may be moving up faster than expected. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of news to cover today, so let's dive right in and get started. First up, we do have some more news from the NHL waiver wire. We did have a claim. Yesterday, we had Lukas Sedlak of the Colorado Avalanche placed on waivers, and he was claimed today by the Philadelphia Flyers. So, of course, Lukas Sedlak has about 165 games now of NHL experience. He's 29 years old. He played for 3 years from between 16 and 19 back in Columbus, went back to Europe for a few years, and then came back to the NHL this year, signing a one-year, two-way deal with the Avalanche. It has a pretty high pay rate for the AHL should he end up there, of $500,000, which is unusually high, but certainly made it worth his while to come over and give it his best attempt here. But of course, the Philadelphia Flyers are off to a good start, but certainly they have a lot of young players they're trying to incorporate into that lineup, can use this player. And the other thing too is there's familiarity. Of course, Coach John Tortorella, new coach of the Flyers, would have experience dealing with Sedlak from his days in Columbus, so they would know what he's capable of and have some familiarity. So kind of not too shocking and surprising there that we've seen this take place today. So Sedlak to the Flyers. More players on waivers today, only two, but some interesting names that you just never know could be intriguing to other teams. The New York Rangers have placed forward Dryden Hunt on waivers, and the Vancouver Canucks have placed forward Philip DiGiuseppe on waivers. So we'll find out at 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow if either player will be claimed or if they can be reassigned to their American League affiliate. Now, on to some other news. We have a variety of injuries to talk about today. Probably the most significant injury news that came out today was the Avalanche announcing that captain Gabriel Landeskog is going to be out for 12 weeks after undergoing arthroscopic knee surgery. Now, we already knew that Landeskog was going to be out to start the year. The last report we had heard, I think it was during training camp, I believe Jared Bednar had said at one point that he was going to be at least a few weeks before he was able to skate, and it wasn't really a clear-cut timeline. Well, it looks like whatever he was dealing with requires surgery now, and it wasn't improving enough because we know Landeskog had a knee surgery last season, missed the last chunk of it, but was back in time for the end of the year in playoffs. And obviously, he had the whole summer. He would have had the surgery much sooner, I'm sure, had he, known for sure that he needed it, I guess you could say. So, anyways, that's bad news for them. We knew he was going to be out for a while, but another 12 weeks from today is basically 3 months. So you're looking at November, December, January, probably mid to late January, early February, probably before he's back. That's not encouraging, but hopefully at the same time, once he comes back, if he's good and healthy and strong, obviously rested, can help make a charge towards the end of the season. Be like getting your own rental kind of player back at the deadline. Obviously, he should be back before the deadline, but same idea as picking up a big player late in the season by trade. So we'll see how Landeskog does. Obviously, it's a big blow to the Avalanche. The Washington Capitals lost Connor Brown in last night's action as well. He suffered a lower body injury. Don't know the full extent of it beyond that, but they have indicated he is going to be out long term. For right now, I believe, according to CapFriendly, he's only on regular injury reserve, but sounds like he'll be eligible to go on to long-term injury reserve should they need that extra cap space. The Maple Leafs officially placed Jake Muzzin on injury reserve today. Of course, we've seen him get hurt the other day dealing with a neck injury against the Coyotes. Of course, with his long history of concussions and other type of head-related issues and other injuries, it sounds like he is going to be out long-term. Again, another player that could be out for an extended time. They certainly want to take their time with this. Be careful. Make sure he's good and able to be, play again when he's ready to go. And you don't want to mess around and get this wrong or rush him back. So he could end up out more than, a couple of weeks. We don't really know yet, but he has not been placed on long-term injury reserve. You can do that retroactively as well if the injury turns out to be longer term than originally expected, if you need the cap space. And right now they don't. So we'll see where things go in that respect, but Muzzin could be out for an extended time for the Leafs, which is certainly another big blow on the back end. Aaron Ekblad also for Florida, we knew that he got hurt. We talked about this yesterday, but now we know a little bit more about the injury. Just the fact that he's going to be out long-term as well. For the third year in a row, Ekblad is going to be out for an extended period of time. He seems to be really unlucky in that sense, and this Florida blue line is not looking too good. I mean, Brandon Montour is currently hurt as well. Now, thankfully, Montour shouldn't be out too much longer. I believe they said he should be able to join them for practice in the next couple of days, so hopefully he won't miss more than another 1 or 2 games, and then he'll be back. But, of course, Mackenzie Weegar was traded. You take away Montour, you take away Ekblad. Suddenly you have a guy like, Mark Stahl and Gustav Forsling playing top minutes on D, and that is not ideal at all. So the Florida blue line, to me, I already had concerns of it being a little bit thin after the Matthew Tkachuk acquisition. Sure, they have a great group of forwards. I understand their opportunity to jump and getting a superstar player like Tkachuk, but it did leave them a little thin on the back end. And now with these injuries, it's even worse. So hopefully they can play their way through this, but it could have an impact for sure on the early part of the year. But like I said, right now we don't know the exact kind of timeline for Ekblad, just that it is going to be a longer term issue, which is obviously bad news for Florida. We have a signing as well, including a prospect in Minnesota, signing a 2022 third-round pick, Michael Milne, who was the left winger. He was a little bit of a late bloomer, selected at age 19 out of the WHL's Winnipeg Ice team. He's now 20 years old and is now currently with Iowa in the American Hockey League. So we'll see. Now he's got an official NHL contract. He would have been either in Iowa on an amateur tryout or on a AHL-only deal. I'm not sure what the original contract that was signed, but that can obviously be changed now. He's be eligible to be called up. Not that I see that happening for some time. Obviously, Minnesota's got a fairly deep group, and obviously I know they haven't had the start to the year they were hoping for, but certainly does not appear like this player would factor into their plans for some time. Now, like I said, we have a couple of fairly big items of news as well, including the Calgary Flames. Of course, we know the Calgary Flames, you can say, are pretty desperate for a new arena. Now, I personally haven't visited the Calgary arena. I've been to a bunch of NHL places for games over the years, but I haven't been to that specific one. But I know, listening to the locals and Calgary fans, there's a lot there that needs to be upgraded, and the desire for a new arena is pretty substantial. Now, we've seen talks between the team and the city take place a couple of different times. Most recently, things were progressing pretty strongly, moving forward, and then all of a sudden the deal kind of got canceled. The Flames kind of went back, looked for some changes, and there was no dice, and things didn't go well. But we did get confirmation today that the City of Calgary and Calgary Sports and Entertainment Group have re-entered into formal negotiations for a new arena, which is fantastic news, because this is not a quick process, as we know. Like, when teams are looking to build a new arena, the whole negotiation process can be like sometimes a year long, and then you're looking like sometimes another year on top of that to get everything lined up and all the, everything you need to do before shovels go into the ground, and then a couple of years on top of that to build. It's a 3 to 4, sometimes 5-year process, depending on the whole start to finish, from the initial negotiations to like it's ready to roll and we can move in. It's not quick in the least. So for Flames fans, this is certainly good news. Hopefully things go well, and hopefully this works out and they can come to an agreement and hopefully stick with it this time. Because of all the teams around the league, they are certainly one of the teams near the top of the list that would be, pretty desperate for a new arena. You could throw another Canadian team like Ottawa in the mix. Of course, they're well along in their negotiations and their process to get their new downtown arena as well. Things are progressing there in a positive way. I'm not sure when we'll have updates on that again. Probably not for a little bit, but still, they're also in the process and well along. So we could have a couple new arenas in the Canadian markets here in the next few years. And we also got a really significant update as well from Gary Bettman at the Board of Governors meetings in New York. He has said that the escrow that's owed to the owners from the NHL players, which is a lot of money that accrued during the COVID shutdown, essentially, that money could be paid back ahead of schedule, as possibly as quick as the end of the current season, with revenue projections being higher than expected. I know a lot of them, in the past at least, they had said it's probably going to be this year and probably one more, because we're looking at probably another $1 million increase in cap next summer, and then the summer after that would be when we could expect a bigger jump, because at that point that would be when everything would be paid, and it's looking like it could be a year early, which would be massive news to a lot of NHL teams, with so many teams in long-term injury reserve and tight up against the salary cap with contracts coming due. You always hear a lot of talk. That's where a lot of trade rumors come from, because a lot of times it's because teams can't afford to keep certain players and they have to move them out and find a cheaper way to replace them, essentially. So we could end up possibly seeing this summer, if things go well, no guarantees of course, a potential increase of up to $4 million instead of the original projection of $1 million. So like I said, the teams thought they were getting a $1 million increase. They could get $4 million. That's huge. We're looking at a lot of the middle type of players, like they're the ones getting squeezed the most. The top players continue to take more and more of the pool of money. There's lots of players on league minimum deals that will probably continue to see that. It's the guys in the middle, like your middle class of NHL players, that I find that get squeezed the most, and more of that group will get bumped down to getting those cheaper league minimum contracts, or in some cases get right out of the league. So we'll have to see where this goes, but this could be massive news for a lot of teams trying to make decisions ahead of next offseason. As well, we got some teasers today between Adidas and all the NHL teams putting out a teaser on their social media about the new reverse retro jerseys coming. So reverse retro jerseys 2.0. This will be the second go around of this, as teams kind of look back to another part of their history and incorporate those designs with combination of the traditional designs to make these reverse retro jerseys. So it should be interesting to see what we have. I know we don't have official releases or any images from the teams or Adidas directly. There have been some teams that there's images circulating on social media that are leaks, but until they're confirmed, no point in getting too excited or too grumpy if you don't like it either. But we certainly will have lots to talk about in the jersey world coming here on the next day or two, as those are all confirmed and more information comes out. Now, as I mentioned, we have some trade talk I want to take a look at today. We're going to look at 3 different teams. Going to start with reports from TSN's Insider Trading last night with Darren Dreger talking about a right-shot defenseman out of Pittsburgh that may have interest or be interesting to a variety of Canadian NHL clubs. Now, he went on to clarify and say that he doesn't have sources saying that these teams are definitely interested. He's kind of talking about based on their needs on the roster, which is obvious omissions that they could use, and in connection with what he might have heard for rumblings in the past, so to speak, but no confirmation that these teams are talking to Pittsburgh or anything like that. But Pierre-Olivier Joseph, a former first-round pick, is a right-shot defenseman in Pittsburgh that's kind of boxed out, so to speak. They have more than enough NHLD, a lot of playing time. So obviously, it's a situation where the Penguins might be looking to make a move here. He lists off Canadian teams like Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver as all having some degree there of a connection, like I said, based on needs, not necessarily that they've been linked to them per se. But I know, like in Ottawa's case, been talking about getting another top 4 or top 6 right shot defenseman all season back into the offseason. We've been linked to Jacob Chychrun. Nothing's been happening there. I don't know that a guy like Joseph is really a better fit by any means. He could be a lot cheaper, that's for sure, based on contract that he's earning and the price to acquire him. His brother plays for Ottawa, Matthew Joseph, so there could be some desire in that sense, but I don't know that it's going to be a huge thing, big help. Montreal might be a better fit, where they're certainly have a lot of other young D-men and he might be able to fit in with and be a big part of their future. Toronto is running into a ton of injuries, of course, and they really don't have much for right shot D, with Justin Hall being the main right D on the roster. A lot of the other D, even guys that can come up and be recalled, are all lefties as well. They're really short on right-handers, so might be of interest there. And we know Vancouver, of course, has had a horrendous start, which we'll talk about here in a moment. They very well could have a connection there, because they could use some help, I think, on the blue line, that's fair to say. And, of course, the former Penguin brass that have worked now for the Canucks certainly have familiarity. Now, staying with Vancouver for a moment, there are reports through that was an interview on dailyfaceoff.com. I believe it was Colby Cohen that was talking, saying that he's got sources saying that the Vancouver Canucks are having dressing room issues, and there seems to be some friction and a bit of a divide, you could say, between parts of the team. Essentially, the star players, your top big guns, and the rest of the team, there seems to be a disconnect and some frustration there. Obviously, we saw Connor Garland be a healthy scratch last night, and he went on to say that was reported to be not a popular decision amongst the players. Obviously, Bruce Boudreau, I think for the most part, is a pretty good coach and has done a lot of good things since he took over the job in Vancouver last season. But at the same time, even though he did well and seemed to have a good, connection with the players early on last year, I'm not sure that seems to be there right now. And all those, good positive things that they did, they're not showing up right now in Vancouver. And obviously they've had an incredibly bad start, going with their 4th consecutive loss to start the season, albeit last night they lost to Columbus in overtime. So at least they garnered a point. But again, another blown lead. The Canucks have in 4 straight games now had multi-goal leads. They've had good starts to the game, but they always seem to have these lapses and blow the lead and lose the game. Obviously, could we see some kind of a trade there to kind of shake things up? I know there's a lot of concern and talk about the future of Bo Horvat. We don't know how things are going to go on that front, expiring contract, and it's difficult to say where things are going to go on that front. And the Garland scratch, where does that leave us? And if the dressing room is kind of described as being a cliquey dressing room that's dysfunctional, according to these reports here on Daily Faceoff, it makes you wonder what's going to take. I mean, I know, like I said before, Bruce Boudreau's seat is getting hotter by the day, so I won't be shocked if we see a coaching change, but I kind of half wonder if we're going to see a trade of some sort as well, because that roster is part of the problem too, in my opinion. That blue line is not nearly strong enough, and if there's that much of a divide between the star players and the rest of the guys, then that obviously needs a change as well. So we'll see where things go. But as I mentioned as well, the Canucks were playing the Jackets last night. 2 teams off to 0-3 starts. Not great. Columbus is another team that I don't think they're expected to be a top-tier team this year, but I think they're expected to do a little bit better than what they have been so far. Getting a win in overtime is maybe a start to get something going in the right direction, but their defensive woes has certainly been part of their issues as well. Of course, Patrick Laine being hurt doesn't help either, but I do wonder with the defensive breakdowns and mistakes we've seen on that team too, if they could be another team looking for help on the blue line, maybe making a trade to shake things up. So we'll see. Don't really have any strong connections on a source in Columbus saying that there's any particular players that could be shopped or whatnot, just based on the fact that how they've played, what they could use. It's just an obvious weakness right now that I wonder if Jarmo Kekalainen could be looking to shake things up. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.